Good evening, everyone. I am Bhanupriya from FFE, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Nanu Swami, who will be presenting on the topic Borderless Engineering Transforming Talent into a Global Innovation Leaders. Nanu Swami is a technology entrepreneur with over 3 decades of experience in Silicon Valley, where he has pioneered several groundbreaking innovations. He holds a BTech and an MS degree from IIT Madras and has been at the front end of technologies like world's first e-commerce platform at open market, cloud compilers now part of AWS, and the first flexible wearable computer for health monitoring. As the founder of Maxillary Foundation, Nanu is deeply committed to democratizing innovation and empowering engineers through technology, education, and mentorship. His previous venture, Center in Boston, was recognized with the Presidential Award from President Obama in 2013 for excellence in informal STEM. Currently, Nanu is focused on cutting edge technologies, including agentic AI system capable of autonomously executing complex tasks. His AI first venture studio has successfully incubated multiple deep tech startups, including Kochadai Technology, an IIT Madras incubated startup developing AI powered rapid prototyping platforms. His innovative model allows engineers, even from Tier 2 and 3 cities, to create global products while remaining their communities. A published author and holder of several patents in cybersecurity, Nanu also partners with prestigious institutions such as IIT Madras Incubation Cell and IITM Research Park, working to reshape India's role in global innovation economy. We are incredibly fortunate to have you, Mr. Nanuswamy, here with us today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nanuswamy, who will take us through the fascinating topic how the borderless engineering is shaping the future of global innovation. I would really like to welcome you, sir, and thank you for joining on time and before the time only. Over to you, sir. I'll stop sharing the screen. You can
Okay.
take over.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bhanupriya, Vinod, and the team. Great pleasure to be here today. Um, and Let me see if I can share my screen here. Can you folks see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think first I came to know about the Joy Thomas Foundation just a few weeks ago. Although he was my hostel mate for 3 years, um, the number one ranker, which we never forget. So I'm happy to be here and bring up the spirit of his thought process, his thinking, which was like unique and way out of reach for most of us. So I'm not going to make this a monologue where I keep talking because I'm not sure what backgrounds people come from. There may be some people, what I talk makes a lot of sense. Maybe some people it doesn't make sense. So ideally, I'd like to make it as light as possible and then get into deeper things as required. So basically, the world has changed over the last 2 years. So from my perspective, I saw the change coming in more than 2 years ago. The first versions of ChatGPT, the LLMs, and AI as such. So I came to India in 2019 for the first time, and we did a lot of machine learning, data science courses for small town people, and that continued for a little while. But even today, when we talk about data science and AI and ML, people generally take some examples, run it, and then they become they become experts claim to be experts, but there's a lot more to it. And things have changed over the last, I would say, uh, last year, things have changed a lot. So we've got to a stage where knowledge is abundantly available, freely available. And this has changed the paradigm on how things happen. So let me get into the basic things on what I want to get into. So essentially, if I want to kind of read up about genetics, or I want to kind of, although I don't have any knowledge about genomic sequencing, if I really want to do something on genomic sequence and build a product based on that, I can basically pick up those skills with the power of some LLMs backing me, which means that I do not need to know all the details of what's required, but as long as I'm able to drive the LLMs to the destination where I want to go to, we can do a lot of things. I'll give you a few examples of why I say that is possible. And there are certain things which are not possible, which obviously um, are there. But I'll talk to you about possibilities of what can be done. So right now we have a lot of tools which have basically democratized programming. You know, so the service industry that India has been dependent on for the last decade or so, that is basically the business model of OpenAI. So OpenAI's business model is, if there's anybody who's doing remote work, we can do it for them, right? So essentially, LLMs are able to do all kinds of coding, agentic AI, where you have, if a task is too big, you break it down into pieces and then ask each one to do something and work together. So new protocols like MCP, Google's new protocols for agent to agent communication, everything keeps coming up day by day. So we have a lot of Gen AI tools. I've just put a few up here. So the basic shift that has happened is, earlier only trained engineers could, or coders could do things. Right now you can basically hire an agent, uh, a digital agent who can do these things. Um, Building a web page used to take 3 to 4 days. Now it's 5 minutes. And actually building a whole website itself, you could do it in about 10 minutes, deploy it. Tools required were totally different. Now you can do a lot of things using ready-made tools. Even the skill set is required is different. Um, I don't think you're going to have too much of the coding interviews and other things that have been done in the past, because that is basically taken for granted. It's more about what can you deliver, as opposed to can you put the semicolon at the end of the line. I think people are more focused on what can you deliver, what can you build for me in 1 week, what can you, create and show in a day or in a week or in a month. I think that deliverable is more important than how you get to that point. So even our interview process, we basically look at what can I get out of hiring you? Can you build me something in 10 days, 1 month? It doesn't matter how you do it, but we need to get to the end point. So we kind of moving more mainly into a driver's seat kind of thing. It's basically a good analogy. To drive a car, you really do not need to know how the car works. But if you know how the car works, you're in better shape. So the barriers to entry, earlier it used to be like tech skills, you had to go and, get Ivy League degrees and, so many things. But all that has been broken. And I think the DeepSeek moment, from China, where you had this DeepSeek LLM come out to do major things, is an eye opener. And which means that you can do great things from anywhere, using the power of LLMs. So, one big paradigm shift that is happening is the inversion of this Bloom's taxonomy. So, I think maybe 90% of the people still are taught the Bloom's taxonomy even today, where you basically start by, you know, you got to remember things, that electrons flow from plus to minus. You have to understand why it does that. And then you need to apply it, analyze it, evaluate it, and then create. So to be a creator, you need to accumulate a lot of knowledge. This was what was happening until a year ago. You had to climb this ladder. But right now, with the power of LLMs, this whole thing is totally upside down. You can start with the creation. You can create something. If you are basically a mathematics major, you can say, create a plant monitoring system for my terrace garden. You can start with that thing and use tools to create it for you. And then you can get into the evaluation piece where you see, oh, how does this work? How does that work? And you can get down to the bottom and then figure out, oh, it uses DC current, which flows from left to right or whatever it is. So the complete inversion of this educational paradigm is currently in progress, visible to some, not visible to others. So that paradigm shift has created a lot of new things. So, what used to take like a couple of weeks, with tools like Replit, Glitch, Bolt, New, Vercel, you can basically say build and host a REST API for a coffee shop ordering system. So this one can be done by anybody. So if you're a coffee enthusiast, you don't need to go and look around for somebody, some high-end talent and folks to do that. You basically can do 90%. I would say 100% of 100% of it if you have some basic understanding of how to use the computer. So Gen AI is breaking a lot of barriers. A lot of new things are happening. So essentially, this brings up the the point on why this has happened and how this has happened and how have we come to this point that basically knowledge is a commodity. What I'm saying may sound very harsh, but a lot of knowledge is basically available for tokens, right? So you can go to Claude, you can go to OpenAI, you can go to Perplexity, you can go to Mistral. All these things have been trained on large amounts of data, and picking up that data is all up to you. So this brings up an important point that we basically are in a world of hyper personalized experiences. What I mean is that with all these LLMs, if I want to learn a subject which is totally new to me, I think the first thing is we need to understand that the barrier to understanding things has come down a lot because the LLMs can talk to you in your own language. So if I am a biology major and I do not know mathematics, but I want to find out, the time a rocket goes to the moon, I can start talking with the LLM. I can give it my profile as a biology major who knows only, plankton or whatever it is. And I can tell the LLM to craft a story and explain to me how to calculate the time a rocket takes to go to the moon. Right? Earlier, there was a well-defined path. You had to, to figure out how long rocket time it takes to the moon. You had to learn some basic mathematics, some basic physics, some basic thing, and everybody was given the same textbook. Some people understood, some people did not, and at the end of it, you had, some people who could answer the questions and many people who couldn't, because this was like a factory model. Everybody gets the same thing. But now, with one textbook, we are at an age where each person can get their own copy, personalized with their background. So you can think of an analogy like, for example, if I want to go from New Delhi to New York, many ways to go there. Some people may decide to go through Singapore. Some people may go through Japan. Some people may drive their car and figure out how to get there. So getting to the destination, basically acquiring that knowledge. Different people can go on different paths and acquire that knowledge, and this brings up the concept of hyper personalized learning. So this basically enables us to do things that were not possible earlier. So essentially, things that can be, circling back, things that can be done remotely. If you can give instructions to somebody to do something, right, which is not a physical activity. Maybe even later, I'll talk about physical AI in a minute. But essentially, if you can, call somebody and say, can you find out the total sales that were done for me by state, by time, and give me a report tomorrow. This thing can be done just by giving instructions to the LLM. You don't need somebody sitting somewhere, um, in some service center doing this. So this notion of having work that is being passed down, from one person to the other, I think that paradigm is going to change a little, and a lot of people are going to have agents to do a lot of things, and we basically in our office here in India, we have a very small team. Everybody has access to all the LLMs, and I think we spend a lot of money on tokens, which basically enables us to do a lot of things which required huge teams. So essentially, the 10x philosophy, the 100x philosophy, and this concept of mathematics student can do hardware, a hardware student can figure out biome sequencing, gene sequencing. I think that is all going to become reality. So here in our office here in India, we don't have UX designers, we don't have front end, we don't have back end, we don't have QA testers. Everybody is a generalist and everybody does everything. So right now we have mathematics students who can do hardware. We have basically designers who give prompts and get front end stuff done. So I can give you a lot of examples on the tools and technologies that they use, but essentially a lot of things are changing. So now we've talked a lot about how agents can do different kinds of things. You know, when I say agents, basically prompts. So let me spend a few minutes on prompt engineering, a few minutes on agents, a few minutes on agentic AI, which I think are required things for any job of the future, any job that's even coming up soon. Okay. And today I had to add one more word to my vocabulary, which is agent to agent communication, which was Google's communication protocol. So prompts. I think when I started working with LLMs, I used to wonder, what is this prompt engineering? Basically, all we're doing is just typing some stuff and it's giving you the data. Why is this such an important thing? It sounds so silly. It's like sitting and talking to grandma and asking what's going on, what you're cooking. It seemed to be like that. What do you mean by prompt engineering? So as we started building products, we figured out that each LLM, each thing has its own little quirky behavior. So you may have heard people saying, hey, this thing is hallucinating, right? So this hallucination is basically a part of the LLM's character, right? It is meant to create next tokens, and um, if it is not giving you the right thing, we have figured out that you need to ask it differently. So we use it a lot for code generation, and if the code is not being generated properly, you need to kind of correct it, give it some example, and say, come on, do it like this. Right? So we basically have got to the point where prompts can run from few lines to a few pages, and the description of the prompt, the way you kind of give instructions to the LLM, and the way it replies, that understanding, I think, is very important for going into the future. If it's for silly things like, draw me a Ghibli or something, there's nothing in that. But if you're going to have a sequence of operations, so from in our perspective, complete systems can be designed, which means that a banking app, you can actually design it, right from scratch, from specifications all the way to the end with a flow. And I think you'll be hearing about that maybe the end of the year or early next year, that we are capable of doing this. And from my perspective, that is a very, very high possibility that you may see that maybe later this year, where you just take a screen recording and say, create an app for me, here's a database, and it's going to do it for you. So for these things, there are 1,000 steps. If I give you a zip file, or if I give you a video recording of some application and say, create this application for me, there are 1,000 steps that you need to do. And each of these 1,000 steps needs some kind of prompt. And the response from those prompts need to be sent to the next person. So this is where those agents come. So there may be 1,000 agents to do a job, or there may be 2,000 agents. Some agents it may take like 2 days to create this banking application with hundreds of agents. So the and the way you do each piece of the task is by crafting a prompt which gets the LLM to do what it wants, what you want. And different LLMs behave differently. Um, you know, when you look at the outer layer of the onion, right, it looks all the same from all the LLMs. But as you go deeper, each LLM behaves differently, and you need to know which one is good for coding, which one's good for creating pictures, which one is good for creating SQL queries, all that kind of stuff. So prompts. On top of that, you build agents, and then on top of that, you build a mechanism for agents to communicate with each other. So all these days, we've been designing our own communication systems. Just how do we send data from here to there? Just do a HTTP post, or use your own JSON, and how do we make it do things, or just use some call some tools to do things. So once you have these agents that can do some magic with some data. So you give it some data and then ask it to do something. So it could be like, I'm giving you a table. Can you find out the average um, marks in this? The LLM can do it, but the LLM needs more power to be able to be effective. And what it needs is it needs access to the outside world. So it needs to be able to get data from the web. It needs to be able to open files. It needs to be able to do requests to, maybe the ticketing agency. It needs to be able to log into things. So all these things were the next thing that were added to agents. So you needed tools. So you started with prompts, you then had agents, then you have tools to help these agents. So you can think of it like tools as something that people have to make them do their task faster. So this JCBs are the ones which are there to help people. So the LLMs basically required more tools to be able to do things, and those were provided. So now you have more powerful agents. Now, not only tools, we need some other standard mechanism. So agents that I make may not be able to talk with agents that somebody else makes. So Google has come out with this A2A, agent to agent communication, which was announced yesterday or today, and uh, we also have a new thing that was announced by Anthropic, which is called MCP, which basically gives agents the capability to do things like open files, read from database, cut this picture into two, things that are used for many different things. So, so what am I doing in India? So basically, we are working on a thing which we're calling Make GPT, which is basically the AI interfacing with hardware. So essentially, this is a product which you can, just like you chat with a chatbot and say, you know, draw me a picture, or find out the how long it takes from Delhi to London. Here you can actually type in prompts, which could be like, make me a pet feeder, or make me a robot that can navigate around obstacles. So we are basically building a hardware layer which LLMs can talk to, and with that you can interface with the physical world. So I think with that I'll stop and maybe take questions. So Bhanupriya,
Yes, sir. And the Q&A, we have few questions.
okay.
Scholars, please start posting your questions in the Q&A. In the meanwhile, we'll be answering the remaining questions. One scholar is asking, sir, I want to start my career in AI domain. From where I should start? Could you please give a roadmap to learn to become an AI developer?
Okay. Okay. So my answer will be non-traditional. So I think the best way to get started would be to basically just go to an LLM and say, I want to be an AI developer. Get started on that. I don't think you need courses. I don't think you need anybody. You just get started on that, start in a fresh new way, and I think you'll find your destination much more to your liking. And I think basically yeah, best would be to create, spend $20 on either Claude or OpenAI or something where you have a logged in account, which means it keeps track of your profile, so it knows what all you've done. So you can create an account and say, I want to learn AI. and I want to solve this particular problem, whatever it is. Or you can say, just guide me through. That is the, I think that is the best way to, acquire knowledge these days. And I think your resume, right, at the end of it should be, okay, I built A, B, C, D, E with my knowledge. And I'm not sure if people are going to ask you, do you know how this tree search works? Or, do you, I don't think that deep kind of requirement that was there earlier is really the necessity of today's times. It, I'm not trying to downplay that, but I think there is a role for people to invent new light bulbs. We need a whole group of people who are going to do, pure R&D and figure out how to make the next, light bulb. How is, maybe whether it's using quantum computing, I don't know what it is. There's going to be a group of people who need to know everything from scratch. But I think if it's just, I want to lead a nice life, doing something I enjoy, I think you can pick it up, augment it with talking to this, to a LLM. It can create exercises. It can keep track of things. You can, I don't know. It is limitless. I think that's my answer.
Yep. And the next question, how do you see generative AI impacting the job market? Everybody wants to know this.
It's, I think it is reality. Okay. I think you haven't seen it affect the job market yet. So I think you need to prepare to be a user of Gen AI. Okay, so I think the most important thing is that use Gen AI to become somebody more than who you are, right? I think that is what is going to basically get you the next job. So if somebody says, I'm a UI developer, or I am a genome sequencer, or I am this rocket, I design rockets, whatever it is, right? I think if you're able to say, I do, I can build this mobile app, see this Android app I do, and at the same time, look at this automatic, this watering system in my house that I have, and at the same time, see, I've built this automatic ticket buying system. All I have to do is talk to my agent and tell it the destination and buys my ticket for me. And if you're able to, say that, I built a system to take my kids to school and bring them back using this automated system, I think that's where the future is. I think if you're just going to be looking for jobs in the service sector, I think it's going to be tough. So I would say immediately leverage the power of Gen AI and become at least 10 times more worthy than what you are or what the corporate world is in today. Which means that when you're outside, all the companies, I don't want to name companies, but all of them have been seeing Gen AI not from inside, but more like, oh, it cannot do this. I don't think it's going to take my job, this thing, that thing, and all that. But I think reality is a little bit on the other side. And the only way to handle it is to become multifaceted, which means that you need to be like a Swiss Army knife. And I think that is a requirement which is going to change the whole society. So basically leveraging that, I think, is a real requirement, and I think we're already seeing that. I'll give you a very good example. in San Francisco when we're hiring interns last year. There was a mad, it was very difficult to get people. You had to kind of do bidding, figure out, who then people had the choice of, who's going to give me the most, I'm going to go there. So it was more like a resource driven thing. The person who graduated from college or wherever, they were in the commanding position. Right now, that is totally upside down. And when you go for an interview, basically you're going to be asked what are the skills you're going to come with? What are you going to show? What can you show me that you've done? So I think that is where reality is. Okay.
And the next question is, so when do you think we would make a shift from agentic AI to AGI?
Okay, that is a very difficult question, and nobody knows what the definition of AGI is. So I don't think it's a good. I don't think I can give you a black and white answer. Um, but essentially, we've got to the point where you can, you know, today you instead of writing 1,000 lines of code, you can basically describe what you want. I want this. The air conditioner turned off when there's nobody in this room, and you can make that happen. Things like this, a few things like this, where you interact with the physical world and break the boundaries between the digital world and the physical world. It'll take a little time, but the definition of AGI itself, right? You talk to the OpenAI guys, they have a definition. You talk to Anthropic people, they have one. So I don't think there's a good answer for that. Okay.
The next question, scholar wants to know the difference between management of AWS or Azure cloud, how it is related to a Gen AI.
Okay. So essentially now you have a lot of descriptive languages. This is a very good example of how agentic AI can be used. Maybe there are a few products, but essentially earlier, managing these cloud services in the US was a 200K job minimum, which means $200,000 per year to manage all these servers. And all you had to do was just sit, maintain. It's like maintaining a garden. You need to, keep going around, or all my plants okay, water them a little bit, do the same thing over and over again. It's kind of a job that was well defined. So these kind of things, when you have something that is well defined, a machine, you give an LLM a well defined task, it can do it much better than a human being. A well defined task. So if even in my office, if I have a sequence of things, do this, do that, do this, do that, and if they are programming tasks, by the time I tell the 10th one, you know, the human brain doesn't remember the other seven. But LLMs, they have an infinite, not infinite, they have much larger capacity to remember things. So I can give a whole page of things and get it done very quickly. So this thing falls into the same category where you have this Azure and AWS, they have a language which you can use, the CLI. It's basically a description of what you want to do. So you want to start up a server, you can, theoretically today, I can say, start up a server in Singapore, one in Malaysia, put them on the cloud, put a load balancer, and deploy it on this thing and call it joythomas.com. I can do all this with a prompt. If I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So, descriptive jobs where you can describe things, I think it's going to be again in the category of what I talked about earlier. But creative things, right? Creative, building new things, I think that's where the things are. That's where the future is.
And the next question is, so can you expand a bit on REG?
What is that? R
RAG,
rag. Oh, okay, okay,
rag,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. So I think that's going to be a huge thing in the future because we have data, right? I would say the best way to think about it is, um, everybody keeps some money in there at home for for safety. You keep something at home, in case you want something, or whatever it is, you can pick up that money and use it for things. So you keep, I don't know, maybe whatever, little, much, or a lot. The same way, data, with certain pieces of data that you don't want to part with. So companies, they keep the data locally on their own machines, or in their own premises, and it could be like sales data. It could be like confidential employee data. All that you don't want to give to the put on the cloud, irrespective of how nicely the wording is from the provider that your data is 100% safe. Even like WhatsApp, 100% safe, but there's no need to believe in that. So everybody wants to be able to, everybody understands that data on my premises, in my um, custody, is safe. Right? Now, how do you make an LLM work on that? LLMs have access to all the other things. So RAG is basically a mechanism by which you can use LLMs in conjunction with things like vector databases and a few other tools to organize your data and retrieve data. So it's basically retrieval, augmented generation. You basically, you're, it's, I mean, I'm not sure if that's the exact expansion, but basically you're going to retrieve it, and you're going to augment it, and you're going to generate some data, something, some output from it, from your local data. So that's basically, summary of what it is. And MCP servers are good at doing that. So if you're interested in that, MCP, and people should install their own MCP server. I think that is like the RAG, next version, which is encapsulated in a nice manner.
Next question is it important to get hands on AI tools or get the core concept early?
Uh, okay, so again, see, I'm not a traditional teacher. So for me, getting to the end point is important. So if I ask you to, um, maybe, well, let's say I ask you to, create something, right? I want that thing created. How you get there, I'm not too worried about it, because I'm going to give you specifications that, you're going to create me a house. It has to have a foundation built with the, this brick from here and this cement from here. When I give you that specification and I know that you can do it, it's fine. I don't need to know whether what that cement is and how it was created, and where it was built and all that stuff. So I prefer, the I don't know whether it's called top down or bottom up or whatever it is, but essentially, our make GPT philosophy is basically make things first and then understand the basics, because human curiosity, right, is all about how does this work. When you're a small kid, how does this toy work? You don't need to know about electricity, magnetism, and all that stuff. You just want to figure out, oh, this thing spins, and this one goes faster. So learning by doing, and figuring out all the details when it's required, I think is the way to go. And I would suggest the same thing. If you really want to be practical, hands-on I would recruit such people. But if you're going to a traditional place, traditional hiring company that has been doing it for 25 years, they're going to ask you, come on, tell me what this thing is, what this rag thing is, show me what this thing is. And they're going to go on that path because that's the only path that they know. Because they haven't seen this other side of how you can, you know, be creative and do things. So we hire a lot of offbeat talent, which means that some people in my company, I don't think anybody knows how to traverse a tree. But the amount of things that we're doing with agents, building a software, GUI agent, building this hardware agents, all those things. So it depends on where you're going for your interview. Okay, if you're going to build your own company, I don't think you need too much of that. I think you can, as long as you have an understanding of how it works. But this is very subjective. So my opinions are, it may be, you know, totally in the opposite direction in which many people think.
Okay, yeah, Ishan has one question, that is, what is the use of us learning the things like coding, etc., while AI agents can do all those things?
It's a very good question because I think you need to learn on how to assume that coding is available. Yeah. So, when we were young, right, Joy Thomas's time, when we were in college, like most of the students here, we used to write code in assembly language. So we used to have cards, we used to take those cards, punch those cards, do them, and then we had to write all these opcodes with, typing A6 and then E0 means move from A to B and things like that. If we were doing that today, we will be nowhere. We take that for granted. So assembly language we take for granted. When we were, when by the time we finished, we said, okay, C program is coming. Let's forget about assembly language. Then C program came. This came. That came. That. So I think we are at an age where everybody needs to know that coding is something that you can do. Kind of, what do I do? I have a coding agent with me. What can I do with it? I think that is the way to think about it. But I think the reality is that the world is changing, and I have very clear belief that a lot of these things, these mundane things can be done. And I don't, a lot of people think it's only entry level jobs that are vanishing. It's not only that. I think it's anything that can be described can be done by an LLM, as long as you give it the right tools, which means you take this data, modify it, and move it there, use this thing for login. So my thinking, maybe it's a little hard to take in, but I think it's good advice that people assume that coding is not going to be my differentiator. It's, what can I do with it? Maybe I built this thing, maybe I built that. I think that's what's going to be a differentiator.
And the next one, the scholar is from mining undergraduate. Is asking, how do you think people from different sector contribute or take the maximum use of AI for our sector?
So, to tell you the truth, I think non-computer science students are the ones who can get the most leverage from tools available today. So, um, because all of that has been democratized, what we had to pay like a $200,000 engineer, a software engineer to do has been democratized to about $20. Maybe I'm over exaggerating. Maybe it's now down to you can hire a PhD for $20,000 according to OpenAI. So his price is very high. But I think if you're in the fields of this core engineering, I think you have a better choice of leveraging things and finding real world use cases. So you have the domain knowledge of mines, maybe you underground that whatever it is, so you can build your own little robot or whatever it is, um, leveraging the tools. So I think if you are really working with physical systems, you can really get a shot in the arm by doing by picking up all these skills. And I think one of the key things for that is assume that you don't need to know all the details. You don't need to know exactly how this convoluted neural network works. I don't think you need to know that. You can do a lot without knowing all those details. And again, we have to think of the driver and the car. The driver can drive the car. He doesn't need to know whether it is, this or that. Um, and I think that analogy holds pretty well. I think I cannot hear you.
Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Same scholar asked another question. How can I aspiring entrepreneur take use of Gen AI beside of using AI for allocating repetitive tasks or building things?
Hmm. See, I think you know, in all these colleges, every college I go to, in the front there will be one little board which says, placement. This guy has been, the highest placement, how many lakhs wherever people have been placed, this thing, that thing. I think that board is going to go away, pretty soon, and you're going to have like, how many people have created companies, how many people have actually created products, built products. I think that change is, will happen maybe 5 years, um, where people can leverage tools to do this kind of thing that we're talking about, where you can actually build your own business and build a self-sustaining model where you can live wherever you want and basically have fun doing something that is, I don't know, it could be like um, a small business that is useful, that has been built using some technology for one particular area of the country. And I'll give you a small example. So we don't have Swiggy in small villages. So if you build your own little Swiggy or Zomato for very small villages where there are I don't know how many people, um, you have a model for that. Or you have like this auto driving app, right, where they give like this Uber or the other one, Ola, where you have to give 30% money to the people. You can build your own one with a couple of LLMs, talk to them, build your own app, and then push it in your town, and you can do the same thing. So I think there are a lot of avenues which people will discover once they are kind of removed from this, the feeding into the service industry. That I think that thing, that feeder, once it kinds of dries up, I think we'll have more innovation coming up.
And the another question, can using LLM tools like Cursor, Replit, or Gravity Write will actually help us stand out in placements?
Okay, that's I think. See, these tools can not help you stand out in placement because everybody will do the same thing, right? You give a prompt, you're going to get an answer. Okay, this is exactly what AI and ML was like 5 years ago. I think everybody would have solved this, sinking of the Titanic. Everybody took that same example, ran it, and then you write one query and you write something and it tells, if you're 21 years old male, your chances of surviving are very high. Or you take this breast cancer example. how you take, the few examples which people keep running and then they become experts in that. So this running a replit or running a this thing tells the interviewer that you know reality, that things have changed. That is the only thing that you can tell the interviewer. I'm aware of what's going on. I know that such tools exist, but to differentiate yourself, you need to tell them, for making a complex app, this is not going to work. You have to have agents. You need to break up a big job into smaller jobs. That's the only way to do it. So if you're making like a small 1 or 2 page thing, that Replit and all these other tools will work. But if you want to make a more complex app, you have to break the task into smaller pieces and then assemble all the pieces together. So that skill will help.
And the next question, sir, I was doing web development, but as we see now, there are websites which are able to make very impressive front end web pages and also provide code for that. This now seems very demotivating, although it helped also, but the supply is much more, I think.
Well, so I think the truth is that, as I said earlier, you cannot be just, one person who, like a cook who knows only how to make rice, right? Earlier, it was possible to just make rice and, earn a living. Now you have to, as I said, we don't have UI engineers. Everybody does UI, everybody does database. And I think the plunge into grabbing an additional qualification that, I do UI and hey, just try a few prompts, deploy this UI onto the server, connect it to the database. And I think it should not be demotivating. I think it should be like energizing to understand that you have tools to help you cross over to across the border and pick up additional things. So I think you need to basically spend some time playing with things, additional things. I mean, like backends and all that.
And one last question, how to prepare for placement, some tips or guidance, sir.
Well, the placement scene in India, I'm not very clear on what the thing is going to be, but I think people have realized that being creative, saying my resume is my GitHub here. Instead of a resume, you have a GitHub or something, or you kind of take a picture of something that you have done. I think your resume needs to be more personalized, and then I think human qualities on who you are, how you spent your time. I think things like in your resume saying, I spent, every year I spend 1 month, working in this deaf and dumb school, working with people, doing something. I think those kind of things will make a bigger difference than just saying, I coded 1,000 lines and I'm the top coder in this place. I don't think that will be of much value. Very, too much into the future. I think some human qualities of who you are, how you, I don't know, how you cook with your mother, or something which really connects the uh, person who somehow grabs your resume. And the thing is, most of the resumes go through this automatic process, and I think those resume reviewers are basically going to uh, not just look at how many lines of code you have, but I think if I was one of those things, I would look for some human qualities. Are there some human qualities in this person, and hire them based on that. So,
We got two more questions. If possible, we can answer, otherwise, we can skip.
okay, okay. Hmm.
One scholar is asking something related to finance. Now there is lots of fluctuation in shares,
Hmm.
stocks because of Gen AI. I wanted to start investing in shares. Can you give me a head start or the procedure on how to do this?
So, see the stock market. it is, we fundamentally think that, something good happens today, the stock market will go up tomorrow. But the truth is that, the stock market is going up tomorrow. People are aware of the fact that it's going to go up tomorrow. It's not like a, very clearly, if this, that, you know. So all of what happened with, the last 2 days, it's been going up, down, up, down. So I think getting a mathematical model that defines how the stock market works is going to be a little, um, maybe something to explore. So you need to look at news on what's happening with the bond market in the US. You need to figure out, what each prime minister or president of each country is saying. Find out the tone of the people on what's going on, and all this thing about this trade and tariffs and so many things. So many variables need to be looked at, um, and I think it's a little difficult to bet on the stock market and use it as a source of revenue to get started. I think it was easier to do it over the last few years, and in general, I think it's going to be a little difficult to predict.
Yeah, so last question. Will front end development be taken over by AI or not? How is front end development going to evolve?
See, front end, I think. Um, so the thing is, right now there is capability to take a screen. If you give me some screen and you say, you choose your screen and you choose your target technology, whether you want Node.js or you want React or whatever it is, right? There is a path to get you there. It can. There are so many examples of it working, right? Where you can actually get a working app complete with data that does what this thing, basically one piece of what the UI engineer does. But it's going to evolve. But as I said earlier with the previous question, people working on things should not, compartmentalize themselves. You have to kind of embrace new things. And in this new world, it's not going to be like earlier. I was the best UI designer, and here it is. I'm going to get this job. They're going to look for multiple qualities. So the reason is that Gen AI has brought about 30% improvement in productivity. This is what Salesforce man Mark Benioff has claimed, and many others have claimed. So when you get 30% increase in productivity, you're going to hire 30% less people, which means that if I'm going to hire somebody, that person better be 60% better than what a traditional guy would have been last year. So if you're a UI engineer, you got to be at least 6 times better than what you were. You got to pick up those skills, which I think is what we need to mentally align, and we should not be scared of that because tools allow you to do that. So I would suggest that augment skills, use Gen AI tools to basically do more than what you can, and I think that's the way to get hired.
Okay. I think we are done with the Q&A. And thank you so much, Mr. Nanuswamy, for such an insightful and inspiring session. Your expertise and vision on borderless engineering have truly inspired all of us. And there's a lot of takeaway from this webinar. And we also like to appreciate our scholars and the participants for joining the today's session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful.